The Winnipeg Jets had to do something they've never done before. Facing elimination down 3-1 to the Stars, the Jets had to simply win a game, and they did it in incredible fashion. Is it enough to spring them on to a series win? Let's chat about that on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. Most of all, though, we just love and appreciate your support. Tonight's episode, obviously, we are chatting about the Jets once again extending this series just a little bit longer, giving themselves a legitimate lifeline. Game 5 was one of the biggest tests in franchise history, which this year we've said that a lot for some reason. It feels like Winnipeg continues to tread on new ground, some of it not particularly good ground. If we're being honest, the way that Winnipeg has kind of gotten itself into some very hairy situations, not ideal, right? Not ideal. But of course, the Jets, they've come a long way through the season. They've had to battle through a lot of adversity, some of it out of their control, some of it self-inflicted. And so here we are where the Jets were down 3-1 in the series against the Stars, and they put on, again, one of their best games of the playoffs. Another 4-0 shutout of the Stars. Strangely, the second shutout at home this series with a 4-0 scoreline at that. And the way that Winnipeg really played overall was pretty suffocating. They were physical. They were aggressive. They didn't let the Stars really do much of anything. Rantanen was essentially marked out and really didn't have a lot to do in this game. Most of the other Stars forwards really couldn't get much going. And amidst all of this, there was a lot of really questionable officiating. Like the first Jets power play, Tanev just toe-picked, and somehow that was called like a trip or something. And from there, it just seemed like the refs really didn't have a particularly great handle on the game. Both teams walked out with at least 4+ power plays. The Jets even had a 5-on-3. I feel like the 5-on-3 was legitimate, but it was just, it was a weird night. And for a game like this, you really would hope that the refs wouldn't insert themselves. It kind of felt like they did, though. So there was one funny thing. If you missed it, Mark Scheifele actually gloved the puck into the net, and all of the fans started saying should have kicked it. So that's a little bit of funny self-awareness. Even if the Jets lose this series, at least they still don't lose in funny chance. So good on the fans there. But for Winnipeg, I think that this was a game where, truth be told, I didn't worry about this one as much as I worry about the next one. At home, Winnipeg has generally been almost unbeatable. In fact, the Stars are the only team that have actually cracked Winnipeg's shell when they're on home ice. And so they did it once. They could not do it a second time. And a third attempt has failed. So it's pretty clear that when Winnipeg is on its own ice, it's been a very different playoff experience. And I don't know if Dallas was just not really playing that aggressively tonight. You've got a 3-1 series lead. You don't need to risk anything crazy, and maybe the Stars are sort of saving up for Game 6. I don't know. It just felt like Dallas really didn't have a lot going. Hellebuyck did make a really early save that was a huge stop right in front of goal. I don't recall who had the opportunity, but he made a great glove save that was a little bit improvisational, so maybe that had some momentum swinging stuff. I don't know. But at the end of the day, the Jets needed to take care of business. They did. And interestingly, the Jets actually scored 2 power play goals. And they even scored a 5-on-3 power play goal, which is kind of amazing because they were one of the worst teams in the league this year. Not even kidding when it came to 5-on-3 power plays. So maybe you just put the cup in the bag now. I don't really know. But for this one, I think a lot of us are happy and excited, but also a little bit tentative. We all know that the Jets at home are a very strong team. It's kind of what happens when you leave the confines of Canada life that become a little bit more questionable. So for the night, right, enjoy it. Winnipeg has given itself another lifeline. The Stars didn't really show up in my mind, and that might just be partly because of how the Jets played, partly because, again, they're 3-1 up heading into this game. They didn't need to do anything crazy. They probably feel pretty confident about sealing the series in Game 6 on home ice, and so maybe they didn't cash all of their chips. But I do think it probably would have behooved the Stars to finish this one out very quickly. You're going to want to get ready for the Oilers. Edmonton has... I don't know if they're like great or whatever, but they just beat the Knights, and obviously Vegas was one of the teams that I think a lot of us were particularly worried about. And so, this is going to be a real interesting one, right? This series, it's hard to really predict how it's going to unfold for the last game or two. I honestly have no clue what to expect from whatever Dallas throws at us in Game 6. We're going to talk a little bit about Game 6 heading into the end of this episode. But Game 5, at least in the meantime, what a fun night. If this is the last night that Nikolai Ehlers plays on home ice as a Winnipeg Jet, he went out with a night to remember. I think we often hear a lot about his playoff performances being mediocre. And tonight, he really elevated his play. He had some fantastic moments. Obviously, he really scored the most important insurance goal. And I just thought that he had a really bright evening. The past couple of games, he's looked a lot more himself. He's been, a key contributor in some of these victories. And, I just think we're all going to really miss him. I know a lot of folks think he's soft and have a lot of reservations about his game. But I promise you, when you see his absence and his lack of skating and stuff, and the transition ability that he brings, his creativity and spark, it's going to be a lot more noticeable with this team. We already see the Jets as they are sometimes struggle to create offense. Not tonight, but in other games, it's been a bit of a glaring issue. And if you lose Ehlers, it's going to be really hard to replace him. So for as long as we still have Nick, treasure him. He's a great player. It's going to be tough if he does leave. I'm hoping that they find a way to bring him back and that he signs an extension. I just think that the Jets don't have anyone that can really replace him. So, yeah, big game from him. Also, quietly, Hellebuyck having a really big game himself. Hellebuyck on home ice doesn't really seem to have the same issues as Hellebuyck on the road. So, I don't know if I want to say that he's fixed, because we all know that the moment he leaves Canada Life Center, things have usually collapsed and spiraled. It did not in Game 3, although I will say Game 4. The first 2 goals against were not great. Game 3, obviously, he did collapse a little bit. Game 4, he didn't really give up a ton, but the first 2 goals that he gave up were pretty squeaky to Gronlund. So this one, tonight he shut everyone down. He was pretty great, and I think the Jets as a whole just really controlled the game, basically from start to finish. I don't know what to make of that in terms of potential impacts for Game 6, but if there's one thing that's probably been true for the Jets, it's that the way that they arrange themselves and how they do it really relies on Winnipeg having the last change advantage, right? Or late change advantage. If you've got that, Winnipeg has usually been able to get the line matchups that they want. When they go on the road, they don't control that. So that's going to be a really big thing. We'll have to see how the Jets come out of this, but it's going to be a fascinating end to the series. If nothing else, the guys have fought back, and I think that's the main thing that we were asking for. So can they do it for 2 more times? We're going to find out. We're going to have to start with just one for now, but we'll see how that goes this coming weekend, right? But while we're at it, I do want to talk a little bit about the special teams, because I think we saw some interesting stuff from this game. And, special teams have really come under the lens for the Jets recently, because the power play has been bad and the penalty kill really hasn't been good either. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but the penalty kill has been one of Winnipeg's biggest weaknesses in this series. We'll chat about that in just a brief moment. Before we do, though, did want to shout out our friends and partners at Gametime. There's nothing like playoff hockey. The energy, the rivalries, the nonstop action. With the Stanley Cup playoffs heating up, there's never been a better time to see it live. And Gametime makes it, getting into the building fast and affordable. Gametime gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. And ticket prices often drop the closer you get to the puck drop, so you can score big without overpaying. I used Gametime when I was picking up tickets for Ravens versus Chiefs in the playoffs a couple years ago. And what was awesome was I actually saw my seat view from the app. I could tell where I was sitting, what my view was going to be like, and I had upfront pricing, right? I didn't have to get hit with a bunch of hidden charges, surprise fees. I knew what I was paying immediately. And speaking of the NFL and planning ahead, the NFL schedule release just dropped, so you better believe I'm getting to look at my fall calendar and getting ready for all the Ravens games. And of course, you'll find great seats for as low as $100 thanks to exclusive discounts. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Hey friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers, thank you so much for rejoining us on this episode as we're chatting a little bit about some really interesting stuff coming out of this Stars and Jets series. It's been very back and forth. I think on the whole, I would say Winnipeg has played better in this series more consistently than they did in the Blue series, which is funny because the record in this series is worse. But, you look at how the Jets have generally been in their away games. And honestly, there was only one really, really awful game in this series. Everything else has been close margins. And part of those margins really comes down to the special teams. The Dallas PK has been elite through most of the season. It was one of the top-ranked special teams units in the whole league versus really what was the number one power play for almost the whole season in the Jets. And so one of these two things had to be beaten, right? Something had to give. And in this series, a lot of it has kind of been the power play losing to the Stars PK. Now, I know a lot of Stars fans have said that I haven't occasionally given the Stars PK credit. And I think in my view, it's not so much that I don't give them credit. It's that I just feel like in one of these games, right, you get 4-ish power play opportunities. The Jets not scoring on any of them is super unusual. Even against elite PK units, you usually give up at least something. And the Jets weren't even getting good looks. The Stars were shutting down the slot area. They were generally limiting net front traffic for the most part. And so Winnipeg was trying a lot of cross-slot passes and looking for some very specific seams. That didn't really work. And I don't quite know why in this game things just finally clicked a little bit. I think the Stars maybe had a couple of breakdowns here and there. The Ehlers one was just sort of a bit of a fluky one in my mind. He's been trying that goal line play quite a bit throughout the postseason that he's been healthy. Hasn't really worked. Finally, it did. And so, yay, I guess. But the Nemesnikov goal, that one I kind of look at as more of just a hard forecheck from the second unit and a bit of a breakdown from the Stars PK unit, a really rare one, right? You look at how the Stars have generally defended that slot area. It's been very difficult for the Jets to find any sort of pay dirt. So when this series goes back to Dallas, I'm going to be very, very curious. If the Jets do get an early power play or something, I'd like to see how the Stars try to manage either rebounds, deflections, or some of those shooting and scoring lanes. Winnipeg had much better penetration tonight than it did at any other point in the series. So maybe the power play is back a little bit more. Maybe it's too early to say. But I think for the Jets, just feeling like this top unit can actually perform again is a big deal, right? Velarde really hasn't looked like himself. But, I think the unit as a whole has tried to make some adjustments, whether it's on their zone entries, some of the passing and seams that they've been looking for, the passing lanes and seams that they've been looking for. Some of it I don't always agree with, and I think the Jets get away from what makes some of their work down at the goal line really effective. When Velarde's able to kind of anchor that, it'll be the goalie's right side, but of course his left side. I feel like that's where you've usually had more chaos in the crease and stuff, and the Jets kind of have moved away from that a bit, partly because the Stars haven't given them as much of that space, but it'd just be interesting to see if the Jets try and go for that. On the flip side, the Jets' PK has been a real problem this series. Dallas has had some fantastic looks, and I don't even think it was like, the screenshots or even net front traffic or deflections as much as it was just defensive breakdowns and some good shots and shaky goaltending from Hellebuyck, right? All that stuff kind of fed into a Stars power play that's been really hot this postseason. They've had one of the top 5 power plays in this playoffs. I think they're clicking at something around, well, before tonight, they were at like 32-ish%, which is pretty crazy. Power play scoring in general throughout this postseason has really been elevated, but especially for the Stars team, the power play was good during the regular season, but it wasn't like top of the league good, right? It was decent. The PK was definitely the really elite part of their special teams unit. The power play had some solid moments, but I don't think it was quite clicking along the way it is right now. I don't know what's quite changed for them, but it just feels like they found those softer angles and spots around the faceoff circles. They've been able to really take advantage of some good chaos that the Jets have given up. And so I think they've been very smart, very opportunistic. This night, though, the Jets had like 4 PK opportunities, and Dallas really didn't have that many good looks. Harley, I think, was on one of them that may have had one of the best opportunities. I don't know if Hellebuyck actually got the save or if Harley just elevated the puck a little higher than he wanted to over the glove. But aside from that, for the most part, I thought the Jets really disrupted Dallas's puck cycling and movement, their ability to set up any sort of sustained zone possession. And it just felt like Winnipeg was more aggressive on the puck carriers, really playing the body like they were at even strength and generally causing a lot of havoc. And if the Stars are trying to make zone entries, you saw more blue line denials, which I think is a big thing for the Jets. They don't often get those on PKs. And so if they can, and if they can force turnovers, that's a big deal. They actually got some counters the other way doing that. And I wouldn't say that they had too many scoring chances. I think there was one where maybe it was Lowry or Appleton, I don't recall who, that had an opportunity on a cross-slot pass. Ottinger, though, was very wise to it. He made a great save. So it didn't really turn into anything, but I think just seeing that sort of aggression and ability to counter off of those opportunities from Winnipeg is probably, a good sign. So improvements from the PK, improvements from the power play. I'm curious to see if it lasts through the remainder of the series. The Jets' power play has definitely not been great throughout a lot of this postseason, but especially in the Stars series, it's been a bit of a liability. And again, I think we all know that the Stars' PK is really good, but, in some of these games, the Jets are going 0 for 4, 0 for 3, 0 for 4. They would probably go 0 for 5 if they had an opportunity. So, in a series where the even strength play has actually been very close, and neither team I really feel like has been able to authoritatively stamp, a stranglehold on the series for sure at 5v5. Those special teams make such a world of difference. It's a little unfortunate that that's kind of been the deciding factor, because I feel like, in the postseason, you would hope that it's more the 5v5 play that tends to be what dictates the outcome. But in this series, it's really been very special teams heavy. Both teams, I don't know if they're a little bit tired or whatever, but they definitely seem like at 5v5 and even strength, it's been, I wouldn't say bad, but you don't feel quite as much of some of the elite play that maybe you'd expect from these two teams. And maybe it's a little bit of conservative game planning, maybe some gamesmanship, line matching, whatever you want to describe it. I think that there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but definitely feels like the Stars and Jets, compared to the first round, it's not been quite in the same way that we had, the Blues and Avs series. Those were just outright crazy. There was a ton going on, just constant opportunities back and forth. Not so much in some of these games. So very interesting. We'll have to see how that translates to Game 6. And speaking of Game 6, I want to chat about that because I feel like this is going to be either a really inspiring moment for the Jets or an incredibly heartbreaking one for the franchise. So we'll talk about how much of the changes the Jets have tried to make in Game 5 are going to translate and how Winnipeg can try and corral their own behavior on the road. It's been a real problem, these away games, and I don't know if it's really going to change, but there's always a first time for everything, right? As I said, Winnipeg has continually done things that it's never done before, this season in particular, and what's to say that they don't do it at least one or two more times? We'll chat about that in just a little bit. Hey, friends, and welcome back to this episode on Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, game 5 came and went. Big, massive win. Vibes are high. And now the vibes are going to take a little bit of a hit because it's a road game. Game 6. The Jets don't really have home ice advantage at the moment because they lost their first game in Winnipeg. Now it's incumbent upon the Jets to dig deeper than they have ever dug before. And this is saying a lot because they had to dig so incredibly deep for the game 7 win against the Blues. But the Jets, have really upset trend after trend after trend this season, and they've had to really do it some of the hardest ways possible. It's really funny that the Minnesota Wild have their phrase, choose your hard, or whatever it was during their playoff run. Winnipeg, quite frankly, has chosen their hard almost unintentionally half the time. I swear they've made things really challenging on themselves. Certain star players haven't always performed. You've had really shaky goaltending from Hellebuyck. Special teams have been a hot mess on and off. The 5v5 offense has really been all over the place. And so in a lot of ways, it's very surprising that the Jets have managed to still get themselves at least a fighting chance, which is strange to say about a team that's won the President's Trophy. But I think when we get to the postseason, we all know that Winnipeg in the playoffs has been really chaotic and sometimes gets away from the stuff that makes them really successful. Past couple of games, they've looked more like the regular Jets. And so, despite the game 4 loss, I didn't feel quite as bitter about it as I did the Blues games on the road. I certainly did worry that the Jets were just going to lose the series early, potentially as early as game 5. But I will say that the game 4 effort wasn't bad. In terms of scoring chances and stuff, the Jets generally had the edge. Winnipeg was controlling more of the even strength play. It's where, special teams and stuff kind of became a bit of a problem that Winnipeg really lost the edge. And Hellebuyck having a couple of early squeakers from Gronlund, not really great. The second Gronlund goal I don't quite hold as aggressively against him as I do, partly on Sandberg and Niederreiter for their mistakes. Niederreiter fumbling at his own or at the Stars blue line was really inexcusable, and then Sandberg really didn't do the best job of cutting off the passing lane and letting Helly really set for just the shooter. Right, Gronlund was looking shot for the most part, but Helly can't really, do the save set unless he knows for a fact that the passing lane's completely cut off. So, I'm not going to give him too much stick about that. But at the end of the day, right, if you're the Vezina winner and stuff, you just have to find a way to dig deep and make that save. And I think Hellebuyck would probably say the same thing. I think the team as a whole played okay in that game. And so I don't feel like game 6 is necessarily a write-off. Game 6, the Jets are not going to have, last change, which is going to be a bit of a challenge. And if they go with the same lineup that they did in tonight's game, I kind of wonder if that's going to backfire. The Jets have really tried to match the Lowry line against the Rantanen line, which when you don't have that change and the ability to do it on the road, I don't think that really works. As much as Rantanen has had issues in some of these games versus some of the others where he's really gone off, you can only focus on containing him so much. The Stars still have Johnston, what remains of Sagan. You've still got, Robertson if he starts to feel better. Heiskanen coming back is obviously a big deal. Harley has been a real big threat on the back end. So there's a lot of guys that you just really can't overlook. And I think for the Jets, even if they can control the shot counter and stuff at 5v5, they've got to do more, right? They've got to get greasy. They've got to get dirty. And I think one of the biggest things that's really made this series a lot closer than, you might have expected was that the Jets have really played the body. They've sort of taken a page out of the Blues book, I guess, where they've really tried to physically wear down the Stars. I wouldn't say it's been with the intent to injure and maliciousness that we maybe saw in the first series, but the Jets have definitely been hitting really hard. And I think that's actually had some level of impact on the series. When Winnipeg is pressuring the Stars and not giving them time and space, Dallas has been a lot less threatening. This is a very good, very skilled team, but they're not one that plays with the physical intensity of a St. Louis. And even the Jets don't do that, right? Winnipeg is not built that way either, but they've certainly been physical enough in this series, and they've been winning a lot of the forechecks on home ice. Less so on the road, but I do think game 4 wasn't quite as bad as maybe the Gronlund hat trick made it feel. I think it was a closer game. I think the Jets had a couple of bad ones get through, but for the most part, their single biggest issue was just not converting on opportunities. The Jets would have some great looks. Ottinger and the Stars defense really bailed each other out. I thought that they made some great opportunities and blocks. If Ottinger was out of the crease or out of the goal, in would come a Stars defender to make a great block or a clearance. And if, the Stars D kind of got cooked a little bit, Otter was there with a great read and a great stop. And so, if that continues, obviously game 6 is likely to go to Dallas. But I think the Jets have a real opportunity. Winnipeg has not ever really done this before. They've never really been playing from behind in a series quite like this, especially not down 3-1, right? Now they're down 3-2. It becomes a little bit more manageable, right? It's I guess a best of one if you really want to think of it that way for Dallas. But for the Jets, this is a chance to kind of prove the doubters wrong, to prove me wrong. I've said a lot about how I felt about the Jets playoff run and how they've tried to cobble together stuff. This is a really big moment for them, for the franchise. Again, another one of these decision points. If they lose, it is what it is, but I will say that I'll at least feel, a lot better about the effort and the fight that they've put in. They've really dug deep in some of these games. Game 5, they made it look like it was easy for the most part. Now comes the hardest part. Can you win an away game? And it's crazy that we're even saying this about the Jets, but to date, they haven't done it. They haven't been able to get that monkey off the back. If they do that against Dallas with the series trailing, that's going to be a remarkable moment for this franchise. And at that point, you just have to like Winnipeg's odds for a game 7. But game 6, it's going to be a huge one. I know a lot of you Stars fans probably feel like it's not going to be even a decision point at this rate. You're expecting a Stars win. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this one. With how the Jets have played the last couple of games, if they start to get that confidence, if they start to find those lucky bounces, maybe those scoring conversions that they've been missing for a lot of the power plays and some of the biggest chances at even strength, maybe something starts to shift here. I don't think it's going to be as one-sided as some folks have tried to predict. Again, I think at the start of the series, I had the Jets in 7. I fully expected it to take the full series. It's just, it had that feeling going into this. I did not expect the Jets to be down 3-1 at this point already. I thought, it'd probably be a really back and forth series where both teams would win their home games and maybe have to kind of scrap it out for the second set of away games. But obviously that didn't really happen. So here we are. If there's some comfort for Jets fans, 3 of the last 5 playoff runs, apparently some team has come back from a 3-1 series deficit. I don't know if I'm really looking at that yet. I think that's a little bit much to say, but game 6 is a big opportunity for the Jets to do something they haven't done before. They've continued to do that throughout a lot of the season. They've won their first President's Trophy. They've come a long way. They've rebounded from series deficits already. They've won games after losing playoff games, which apparently is a real thing that they just struggle with. So what's one more milestone for this franchise, right? If there's ever a reason for this team to truly make you believe, it's going to have to be game 6. If game 6, if they pull this off, I would actually in some ways view that as a little more impressive than game 7 against the Blues, because the game 7 moment required some good luck, right? Game 6, if the Jets pull it off, is the culmination of a lot more, right? You have to really dig deep for a full 60 minutes to try and scrap out a result. So Game 6 this weekend on Saturday, going to be a huge one. Because we didn't have an episode technically on Thursday, this episode right now is supposed to be that one. It's uploading live on Friday morning in the early AM moments. We'll have a weekend coverage of that game. I'm really hoping that I get to talk about Winnipeg's odds for Game 7. So we'll see you then. But for the time being, I hope you can unclench a little bit, rest a little bit. We have a big game tomorrow. See you then. Have a great night, and as always, go Jets, go.